Welcome back to Danny Phantom Month. Today we're talking about episode 5, which is titled Splitting Images. The plot of this episode: after a fight with the box ghost, Danny needs a new locker, so he gets assigned locker 724, which is said to be cursed. And we find out that in the 50s there was a nerd called Sidney Poindexter who was bullied by everyone and was shoved in his locker so many times that his spirit is said to still remain, which is just hilarious. Just like taking the concept of a nerd getting shoved in his locker, which from my recollection of high school basically never happens, but I really like how the show plays with that stereotype, and especially in this episode with the locker is haunted because how often the nerd was shoved in there is really funny. So we find out Sidney Poindexter is a real ghost that lives inside the locker, and he basically exists to exact revenge on bullies. And throughout this episode, Danny has been like beating up Dash essentially and bullying him, using his powers to bully him, which of course Sam is like, hey, that's pretty irresponsible, but Tucker's like, you know what, he kind of deserves it though, because he's been a dick. And I like this because this episode addresses this flaw of Danny's, which is something that he's done in the last couple episodes. It's a common trope at the end of the first few episodes where Danny will get some kind of revenge on Dash using his powers, which of course is like the thing in the theme song where he's much more unique than the other guy. But then again, like, two wrongs don't make a right and all that stuff. And this episode addresses that he's kind of becoming a bully himself. Just because he's bullying someone who arguably deserves it doesn't really make it right.
This guy, Flash Thompson, he probably deserved what happened. But just because you can beat him up doesn't give you the right to.
And so I like that this episode addresses that. So anyways, Poindexter thinks that Danny is straight up a bully, so he goes after him. They have a fight, and then Poindexter possesses Danny's body and traps Danny in Poindexter's body in the ghost zone. This is the first appearance of the ghost zone, and it's sort of kind of different than later on, but basically there's this like mirror in the locker that that acts as like a portal to the ghost zone, or at least the portion of the ghost zone that Poindexter is from, which is just like this kind of weird black and white 50s version of the school. And like there's all these other presumably ghosts of former students that went to the school. And then there's one point where Danny tries to go outside the school, and it's just floating in space. And later depictions of the ghost zone, we see that there's actually like a lot of stuff in it, and most of it is just like chunks of things randomly floating in space. So this does kind of fit into that. It's just a little bit strange because like everything's black and white, and you like assume that these are all like dead people that used to go to the school. But it's kind of fun because the 50s ghost zone even has like, it's almost like a Mr. Sandman riff playing.
Where am I? It's like I dropped into Grandpa Fenton's yearbook.
It's just like this kind of weird, fun idea. Sort of Back to the Future-ish, also very different. So then Poindexter in Danny's body befriends like Dash and the popular crowd, and there's this subplot about Sam trying to save the frogs from being dissected, which they seem to have live frogs at the school for some reason. But anyways, the point being that Poindexter's temporary popularity, Sam manages to get the popular kids invested in her Save the Frogs movement, which then pays off at the end when Lancer is like, you know, Sam, you could learn a thing or two from students like Dash about activism, and it's kind of great. Oh yeah, also Danny's parents had found out that he was assigned a supposedly haunted locker, so they're like, okay, we're coming to the school and we're gonna hunt that ghost. This episode we get the ghost gloves, which are just boxing gloves for ghosts, I guess. It's kind of unclear what makes them specific. I mean, I guess you can hurt ghosts with them. I guess that's the difference between just regular boxing gloves, but anyways. And then yeah, Tucker and Sam end up using that to force Poindexter back into the ghost zone. Poindexter and Danny have a fight, and then they switch bodies, and Danny manages to go back and make it back to the real world. But because Danny was in Poindexter's body, and Poindexter and Danny's in the ghost zone, when they have a fight, the rest of the like 50s greasers are like really impressed by Poindexter, and they're like, wow, you fought the Halfa, because they call Danny the Halfa because he's half ghost and half kid. And so Poindexter ends up with like a newfound respect in the ghost zone. There's a joke about cross-dressing in this episode, which you could not make today, as well as the Lancer book report, which I'm not going to call the Lancer book report of this episode, was Great Gatsby, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Seabiscuit. And that's about it. Danny learns a lesson about using his powers responsibly and how you shouldn't beat up people. Which is like something you think you would know already. But whatever, it's a fun little episode, and I like that they do address that Danny is like irresponsible with his powers in some of the previous episodes. And yeah, that's about it. A really great use of the high school location and some fun world building with the ghost zone, the history of the school, and good episode. Tune in next week for... Nope, tune in tomorrow for the next episode. Thank you for watching, and subscribe for more Danny Phantom.
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
Bum 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 bum.
Make him the cutest that I've ever seen.
Bum 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 bum.
Give him 2 lips like roses and clover.
Bum bum bum.
Then tell him that his lonesome nights are over.